Broadcast for shooters, hunters, and gun enthusiasts. This is the Firearms Radio Network. The bandwidth for this edition of Gun Guy Radio is supplied by LA Police Gear, lapolicegear.com.
Hello and welcome to episode 110 of Gun Guy Radio. This is the podcast that shines a positive light on the firearms lifestyle. I'm your host Ryan Cross, filling in for Jake, and this is your weekly dose of positive firearms talk without the politics. Today I have with me JW Ramp from the AR-15 podcast. How's it going, J-Dubs?
Hey Ryan, it's going great. Been kind of crazy with work for the past couple weeks, but this weekend I got to the range for, I want to say, 8 or 9 hours total between last night and this morning.
Wow.
Yeah, so we've been having a good time.
So what were you mostly shooting?
It was like a monthly 3-gun sort of a get-together that we do at one of the ranges here. There's 4 or 5 different pistol bays, and so we do rifle, pistol, shotgun, and it's kind of got the tactical bent to it. So we got our multicam on and bursting through doors and all sorts of things, and last night we did it all in the dark, so it was either flashlights or night vision, so that was a great time.
Wow, that sounds really awesome.
Yeah,
I just had I got a new stock in for my 700, so I got it bedded and then took it to the range and did some initial groupings just to make sure how well the bedding improved, and I must say it did make a big improvement, so.
Awesome. Was it one of those like AACs to begin with or something?
Yeah, exactly.
Great. I just did a build with a AICS chassis. Same thing.
Nice. Yeah. I wish I could afford one of them.
Yeah, I haven't been able to reach that one out too far. The only thing around here is about 250, 300 meters. So we got to go over to Ohio, and there's a couple thousand meter plus ranges with steel the whole way out. Me and a couple buddies are really looking forward to heading out that way.
Sweet. Yeah, that Hogue stock that comes on those AACs are just no bueno for.
Yep. A little too rubbery out front.
Yeah, I mean I even dremeled the front a little bit so it didn't touch the barrel when I loaded it on a bipod, but it made a big difference just getting a Bell & Carlson stock on there. Oh, yeah. So the next thing is going to be dropping a couple Benjis on a bottom drop metal kit, so I'm looking at my options there.
Good stuff.
So, yep, done with this AR stuff and moving on to the long range bolt action scene.
Yep. Well, we're kind of closing things in a little tighter this week, going over concealed carry. We were going to have a whole panel together, but it looks like it's just the two of us.
Yep. It'll be a good show. First off, let's announce the great Bond Arms giveaway that we've got going on. So we're giving away a new Bond Arms backup in 45 ACP, a nice little pocket pistol, and you get an entry for every qualified gun or gear review that you submit. And by doing that, you just go to www.firearmsinsider.tv/submit, and we've got a nice little form that has our format on there. And you can review a gun, and we'll take that entry, and you'll be able to, might just win a Bond Arms in 45. Pretty cool little pistol. So we're announcing the winner on May 4th. All reviews must be submitted by April 30th. And Brownells makes this episode of Gun Guy Radio possible. Selection, service, and satisfaction. Find it all at Brownells. Go to gunguyradio.com/satisfaction and click on the affiliate link, and any purchase you make through Brownells will make a very appreciated contribution to the Gun Guy Radio and Firearms Radio Network, so we appreciate that. So into the main topic, concealed carry for noobs.
How long you been carrying, Ryan? You've been shooting for a while?
Yeah, I've been shooting for a while. I've just recently got my permit, maybe a year and a half ago.
Okay.
So I'm definitely consider myself a noob as well. So I feel very qualified to talk about this issue. I do have my Washington State permit as well as a Utah permit, just for some extra reciprocity and background or backup. What about you?
Well, I grew up in Alaska, and that's one of those states where they got something that people like to call constitutional carry. And so as long as you're not a felon, you can carry open or concealed in your car, anything like that, without any permits. With the stipulation that if a cop pulls you over, you got to let them know that you got a gun on you. They do give out permits for reciprocity elsewhere, and we'll get into stuff like that a little bit later here. But now I live in Pennsylvania. I've got a permit here. I got it, I think, when I was in college, and kind of slowly got into things as I got more comfortable. Obviously, strapping a gun to your hip isn't something you just kind of dive right into without thinking about and training with and all that. But it's something that I practice on a daily basis now, where I'm legally allowed to, and where my employer does or does not let me. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, it's definitely a new mindset, because even though you want that thing on your hip and to become second nature, you want to not just fly by the seat of your pants, as far as when there's so much mindset into, okay, when do I need to actually, put into practice what I'm supposed to know? And training is a big aspect of that. If you haven't trained, at least drawing your pistol, whichever way you're carrying it, which we will cover in this episode, different holster options. But there's also the situational awareness of, is it okay? Is that kind of force necessary?
Yeah, you'll find yourself as an armed citizen avoiding situations because you have the means to escalate any situation to a level that's lethal. You need to take yourself out of any situation that could possibly be escalated. So
absolutely,
that's something that definitely affects the way that you live your life, and as you're walking around town, it definitely gives you something else to think about.
Yep. If there's just a loose example, if there's a fist fight with 4 or 5 guys, you can't just whip out your gun and try and break it up, because that's not your responsibility. You're escalating the situation. Now, if one of them were to pull out a gun or a knife, something that would threaten lives, possibly yourself, and your proximity to the situation has a lot to do with it as well. You can't come running over from 2 blocks and trying. You become an instigator in that situation. Another factor instead of something that's going to be a solution. So there's so much. Training and teaching and classes is the most we could recommend, because you really got to know. Masad Ayub teaches a lot on the topic, and that's definitely a good name to look up and to look over some of his materials, get one of his books, and definitely know the do's and don'ts, because there's a good shoot and a bad shoot. And if you're in the situation where you make a bad decision or a mistake that might cost somebody their life, that's going to hang on you for the rest of your own life. So it's definitely a methodical process that's involved. It's a great responsibility, probably one of the greater responsibilities of a citizen that you could possibly take on.
Right, and from the Second Amendment perspective, of course, we want everyone to have access to firearms to be able to use them safely, but bringing it along with you everywhere, it's a huge responsibility, and we want to make sure that everyone who's going to make the decision to do that is going to take the time to train well with it and know what they're doing.
So let's start off with why concealed carry. It's proven that concealed carry in states where it's allowed, which is increasing, the gun homicides are lower and the crime is lower, because the armed response of citizens being able to be there seconds after the incident or during the incident, as opposed to the police are only minutes away in every case.
Right. There's all sorts of stats out there, but it's a really tough stat to come by as far as what has been prevented by the legal use or presentation of a concealed carry handgun. You got stats for mass shootings, you got stats for murders, things like that, but if something went well rather than going bad, it doesn't necessarily get recorded in the same way. So these things are happening every day, and you really don't hear about it because that's not what makes the news.
One good resource is gunfacts.info, and they have some pretty good myths that get debunked and facts to back them up. So just a couple good ones here. In Texas, murder rates fell 50% faster than the national average in the year after concealed carry law passed. So rape also fell 93% faster, and 500% faster after the second year. And assaults also fell 250% faster. So crime rates definitely decline when there's more armed citizens. The saying that a polite society is an armed society is definitely true. So you can go to www.gunfacts.info and check out more of those facts and statistics.
So what are some of the big reasons that people choose to conceal carry? Ryan, do we want to get into that first, or what do you want to touch on first?
Well, let's touch on just a little bit of the legal as far as where you are. You're interested in concealed carry. Let's break it down with the first step of where you live and how that determines you'll be able to get your permits.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, your state is the one that has the laws as far as whether they are a completely unrestricted place, a little more like Alaska or Vermont, places like that, or you'll hear things like shall issue or may issue permit areas, and so that's the legal structure that's in place in your particular state that sets up a process for giving you a permit or a means to carry a firearm, whether that's concealed on your person or whether that's openly on your belt or strapped to your back or whatever. It affects how you can carry firearms inside your cars, all sorts of things like that. And so each county inside your state, those are the ones that are actually issuing the permits and signing off and saying this person's not a threat to their neighborhood and I'm authorizing them to carry a firearm. So it really depends county by county. You're going to be going to your law enforcement officer, most likely in your area. I go to the sheriffs there, who I get the permit from and get it renewed and all that. Normally there's a small fee and a little bit of a wait, maybe a few weeks. I know things are getting kind of crazy in some of the new states where things have just become legal because there's a huge backup. You'll see, I want to say Orange County, one of those places in California where the law just got changed. It's only been 2, maybe 3 weeks since it opened up, and they've got a year's worth of backlog already that they have to process through. What's been your experience, Ryan, with the whole legal process for getting your permit?
My state actually, Washington, was amazingly simple. I had to go back to across the mountains to western Washington because that's where I'm originally from and where my driver's license still has my home address over there. So I had to go back to my county, and I called the sheriff's department, and they told me that I had to go to Tacoma and go to the courthouse. Well, went to the courthouse, and there was nowhere where they were accepting that. Instead, they turned me just across the street to a building that was called the Law Enforcement Support Agency, so LISA, and that's basically where they do handle all their applicants for explosives handling, destructive devices, as well as concealed carry permits. So they just took my money. Can't remember how much it was. It wasn't that much, and did digital fingerprinting. And I think within 2 weeks, it was definitely within 2 weeks, I already had my permit in the mail.
Now you mentioned that you also have a Utah permit. I know each state, when you pick up a permit there, most likely they're going to have reciprocity with other states so that you can carry in their states, and citizens or residents of those states can also carry in yours. Um, I Could you get into that a little bit for why you chose to get yourself a Utah permit?
Yeah, well, actually, I took a concealed carry class before I got my permit, and it's some states it's mandatory to take the class before you can apply, and having that instructor certification stamp, endorsement is mandatory in some areas. It definitely was in mine. So I took a class, and he was from Utah, so he covered firearm safety mostly and concealed carry. There wasn't any kind of actual range session. It was just more of a classroom type setting. So I had to get my Washington State permit first before I could apply for Utah. And the reason why you would want a Utah permit is because Utah's permit and their laws are so well written that a lot of states that are fairly new to concealed carry laws, sometimes they just go, well, we want to have reciprocity with Utah, so everything that they have on the books we want to have on ours. And if you have the Utah permit, you're good in our state as well. And so, usually after that is when that state has built up their own concealed carry program, but they still have reciprocity. So, for example, I have my Washington permit, and it's good in certain states around me, but not in others. So I'd have to pull up real quick. I forgot, but like if I traveled from Idaho to Montana to Wyoming, and then back into Idaho, Oregon, Washington. I mean, there's 5 states right there that if I'm carrying a pistol, I want to make sure that I'm certified, have the permit and the correct certification in all 5 of those states. So there's certain states, I can't remember off the top of my head, that have reciprocity with Washington permit, but then there's other states that don't. So I think Montana, Wyoming, they don't, but that's where the Idaho permit would cover me as well.
Yeah, we run into the same thing here in Pennsylvania. Our permits, you send in some paperwork, and then you show up for a photo, and that's it. There's no class or anything. So we've got reciprocity for 30 some odd states, but for the states that do require classes, the Utah permit's a great way to go.
It's also good because the expiration dates are almost always staggered out. So, my Washington State permit may be up for expiration in 2016. I'm still covered by Utah permit in 2017. So that gives me some leeway to recertifying and reapplying for my Washington permit. But I can still concealed carry in the state when it's expired because I have my Utah permit. So that's one of the benefits for that as well.
So we kind of covered the how to get your permit. So you're going to have a permit in most places to conceal carry. Now, actually getting yourself into a situation where you have to implement that firearm, there's also a whole can of worms behind that legally. You hear terms like castle doctrine, stand your ground. So that's a whole nother part of it.
Yeah, there's some states that will let you use your firearm in a way to not only defend yourself but defend your property. So that's where the castle doctrine comes from. I know Texas is a great example, and I think you might even be able to that extends to your neighbor's property as well. So if someone
to your automobile too.
Your automobile is considered your domicile. So being able to not only use your gun to defend yourself, but if someone's breaking into your car or you just got home and they're breaking into your house, they don't present an immediate threat to you, but if your state's doesn't have the castle doctrine, you might not legally be allowed to use your lethal force, because they're not personally threatening your life. So there's definitely some variables there that you need to be aware of depending on your state. Stand your ground is the obligation to wherever you are. If you're being threatened, you're either can stand your ground with your firearm or you're obligated to retreat from the threat. And so that's where that comes into play. And there's a lot of politics and controversy around that because of the latest high-profile shooting cases. We're not going to get too much into that, but or not into that at all. But those are some laws to definitely know in your area. What are your rights and what are you covered and protected by legally?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Gun Guy Radio isn't really our political avenue here at the Firearms Radio Network, but obviously this is a political issue. So there's ramifications for all of us that own guns. So there's organizations that help us out and try to lobby for things to be opened up a little bit better, and so that when we do have to defend ourselves, we aren't going to be tied up in court for the rest of our lives or locked up for something that we shouldn't necessarily have been locked up for. So there's a lot of details there, and they're different for every single state. So definitely take a look online for some resources. Make sure they have links to the actual codes to your state's laws, because Joe M4 on some forum might spout out some law, and whether he copied it from an old thing or whether he just made it up out of thin air, these are serious things that you really need to find the right answer out for.
Yeah, I read it on the internet will not stand up in court. And you've got to realize that when you're concealed carrying or open carrying, either one, when you use your firearm, you're legally responsible for everything you do. Every bullet that you fire, you're responsible for. So just think of it as, my gun holds 7 bullets. That's 7 possible lawyers. Especially where you can't shoot somebody in the back. Obviously, you almost got to think of it as a CSI or a third party. You got to have perspective to know, when the police respond, what's this going to look like? And you definitely want to be the most responsible and cooperative as you can. So that's other things that you need to think about is, obviously if someone's running away from your house with your TV, if you don't have castle doctrine, I mean, the threat's over, and you're instigating a new incident by taking lethal force. So let's get into YCC, why concealed carry, and some of the benefits and some of the gear that goes into that.
Okay. Well, obviously the best gun is the one that you've got with you. So you can't have your gun locked up in your car or back in your safe or back at home or whatever when something goes down. That's why we're concealed carrying. It's to protect ourselves and the people around us. It's an issue of personal responsibility, and most gun owners that I know that I run into on the range, they take that really seriously, and so that's why they're armed, and they are taking the time to make sure that they're armed safely.
So definitely the reasons for concealed carrying a weapon, self-protection and personal responsibility, as we're seeing more of these incidents where there's a mass shooter, and a lot of us kind of fantasize of what would I do if I was in that situation, but it can be anywhere really where there's an incident. You can be at the gas station and there's a robbery, an armed robber, and that's one situation. There could be, you get in an accident on the road, and when you pull over and the person is, obviously extremely angry and they present a gun. There's so many factors that can happen, and if you don't have your gun with you, then you're SOL. You're kind of up the creek without a paddle. So, especially when you have your family with you. You want to protect your family at all costs, especially your children and your spouse. So those are definitely strong reasons why to become a concealed carrying permit holder.
And we already kind of touched on the statistics just a little bit, that it's kind of tough to track, but the crime statistics really do show that as a populace becomes better armed, that prevents criminals from messing with us. It provides a huge disincentive for them to hassle the average citizen, because there's that larger chance that they might fight back.
Yeah, I mean, let's just take a look at the best example. Look at states that have the strictest gun laws and the strictest restrictions for concealed carry. So, I don't know, just shooting in the dark here, Chicago, and look at all their crime rates. And then states that have the best or the lowest crime rates are the ones that have the most unrestrictive firearms laws, including concealed carry. So, Utah and Texas. So let's talk about concealed carry versus open carry, and this is another hot topic within carrying a firearm. I personally, I know in Washington, open carrying is legal within certain areas. Obviously, the same rules apply for concealed carrying. Not in an establishment that serves alcohol, not in a bar, not in a religious establishment, not in a public assembly, not in a federal building. I'm sure there's some extra ones on there that I'm missing. But I've been concealed carrying in the same store that I've seen somebody open carrying, and my initial observation is that they have so much attention, so much eyes on them, and I am also carrying, but nobody knows, and so I am flying under the radar, not getting any extra attention, not raising anyone's nerves. So I would say that open carry, it's a lot easier to utilize your firearm when it's in an open holster. You're not having to untuck your shirt or anything like that. But I think it's also a little bit more of a statement, a deterrent, that you want people to know that I'm armed and don't try anything crazy or illegal right here, because I'm going to be a first responder, is what you're basically broadcasting. Whether or not you want to be or not, you have that firearm on your hip out in the open, and that's be prepared to answer a lot of questions from people. Maybe take some heat if people disagree with your stance and you having a firearm. If you're scaring their children, I mean, there's just so many things that they're going to possibly bring up and confront you with, whereas concealed carrying, nobody knows, nobody needs to know, it's all on the down low. And for my personality, that's the way I like it. But for others, maybe that's something that they prefer to have that kind of emblazoned on their chest. There's a little bit more of also a patriotic, I don't want to say bravado, but this is America, and I want to support my Second Amendment rights, and there's nothing more Second Amendment than carrying my pistol, right out in the open for all to see, and raising awareness to others, and not letting them grow desensitized to guns, and only see them on the news when there's something bad happening, or only see them in a movie when there's a bad guy, kind of counteracting all that negativity with the positivity that I'm at my store, I'm just going and buying my groceries, I've got my gun on me, there's nothing crazy happening. So I can definitely see the positive factors for that aspect. So there's my long-winded.
That's a really fair way to put both sides. I'm impressed with that.
I am too, actually.
For me, I think open carry has very limited appeal, but I think you really framed the arguments well there. That there's some serious reasons that people do it, and I'm just not on board with them. I don't think it's a good enough exchange to do the whole broadcasting thing. I think that's obviously the loudest voices are the ones that we hear, and so the open carriers that we know about are the ones that are on YouTube that are being dicks to cops and trying to cause reactions just so they can put some up on YouTube.
Yeah.
And that's not the wide majority of open carriers from my experience. But the idea that I'm carrying my gun out because I want everyone to see it and that's going to make the situation better, personally, I'm not on board with that. And so that's why I chose concealed carry. But there are states out there where you're not allowed to do that. where you have to open carry or you have to leave the gun at home. And so that's where you need to make a decision. That
Absolutely.
having that gun with you is probably better than having it locked up where you can't get to it.
Yeah. And we're not saying that all law enforcement is going to react to open carry in a negative way. Obviously, like you said, the loudest voices are the ones we hear. So the videos that we see on YouTube where some girls at the mall are getting hassled because they have guns on their hips, and they're wearing, their short shorts on their just, regular civilian clothes, and they're at the mall, and somebody that does
When
not
have you ever
know.
run into open carriers that look like that?
It's on YouTube, man. I swear.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, it was a really good example, and I think it was kind of set up by maybe the dad in the family, because
Oh
obviously
yeah.
he had a camera and he was recording the whole time. So basically, another onlooker saw the weapon and was obviously didn't know that open carry was legal or whatnot. So they called 911, and the problem is that they call 911, and what the operator hears is, "Yes, I'm at the mall. There's a person with a gun." No context whatsoever. And so obviously the responding officer does not have that context and is anticipating lots of things, lots of bad things. And
Mm-hmm.
so when he approaches, no matter if you're, a 200-pound full-grown man or 100-pound female with a gun, he's still amped up, and he's going to talk very seriously to you, and he's not going to be very happy because, I mean, his adrenaline's up. He thought he was going to be met with an armed response.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely definitely, if you're going to open carry, I would say no. Have the knowledge, because the cops are going to pull you aside, ask you questions. Why are you open carrying? And if you don't know the laws, and if they try and detain you or get your weapon from you, you've got to know what you can and can't do. And there's a couple YouTubers that have tried to push this envelope and possibly show what happens, and that just is really not attractive to me. I don't like to get hassled. I don't want to give, law enforcement a hard time. They've got enough things to worry about. So that's another pro to concealed carry for me, is that the only time my weapon, me and the law enforcement officer need to get involved is that if I'm, at a traffic stop and I let them know I'm also, I have a concealed carry permit. I am carrying a firearm. Here's my permits. I'll let you know where it's at in the car. That's another big thing too, which leads us into the next thing we're going to talk about is firearm transportation.
Yeah, that's a great reason to get a permit, is because it makes bringing guns to and from the range or wherever you're bringing them a whole lot easier. You're not running into some of the laws about, okay, you got to have the ammo separated in this sort of a container in a different compartment and all of that.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you got guns rattling around the back of your trunk, you don't want them loaded necessarily, but having your CCW or your license to carry makes things a little bit easier if you do end up getting inspected or getting pulled over and something's kind of hanging out in your car. Having that permit lets you do a little more than not having it.
Yeah, if you have a little revolver and the cylinder's fully loaded and you've got it in a little gun pouch, zippered up, and obviously you don't have it laying on your dash or in the back because you don't want it clearly visible. Say if you're running into a store and you're parked, so you tuck it under the seat. Well, that's concealed carry by definition. So if you get pulled over and you're like, oh hey, yeah, I forgot, I have a firearm in the car, or if you didn't volunteer that information and they find that through a illegal search, you're gonna have some explaining to do if you don't have a permit, because that is concealed and it's in your vehicle, and so that can get you into some hot water as well if you're not don't have your permit.
All right.
Yeah, so let's get into what kind of guns for concealed carrying, the funnest part.
Oh yeah, this is what we all like to go on and on and on about.
Yes. So what's your preference, JW?
I carry semi-automatics, and I tend to lean towards magazine capacity over caliber diameter. I'm not one of those. I carry a 45 because they don't make a 50, even though they do make it 50. However that goes.
Because they don't make a 46, even
Yeah,
though
there you go.
they still technically make one 46 Roland. But
Yeah, so I carry Glocks. Glocks are reliable. M&Ps, SIGs, those modern guns. Just because they're made out of plastic doesn't mean that they're not quality firearms. They're simple. There's not a bunch of switches and knobs and levers on them, and they're easy to fix if something were, heaven forbid, to go wrong. Even though Glocks never malfunction. So yeah, that's what I carry, and I carry in a 9mm.
well, I think there's a lot of factors into, what kind of gun do you want to choose. I mean, we might personally prefer Glocks, for the reliability and the caliber, or not the caliber, the capacity, and just they're meant to go bang every time, no matter the conditions, hot, cold, dirty, they're meant to be reliable firearms. But there's also seasonally what season it is has kind of an impact on how you carry, and of course that relates to holsters as well, which we'll cover real shortly here. But it's possible that maybe you carry a specific firearm during the winter months because of what you're wearing in the winter allows you to carry a certain way, whereas in the summer, when it's hotter and you're wearing less clothing, your carrying options are a little bit less, and so maybe that has what kind of firearm that you choose to carry, that plays into that. So a snub nose revolver, 5-shot, something that's not going to weigh a whole lot, not going to be real bulky, that you can fit into your shorts or a light jacket. That might be something that you want as a summer attire, whereas in the winter, you're wearing a big heavy coat. Maybe it's something that's full size, 1911 or a service size pistol is more up your alley, just because you have more concealment and cover. You're not going to print as easily. Printing is a big kind of faux pas in the concealed carry world. If you have your gun and you bend over or you turn your body, and then people can see kind of your indentation of your firearm within, through your pants or your jacket or your shirt, that's called printing, and that's something that a lot of us maybe obsess over. Oh, get this latest holster because it, angles at this cant, and you can be able to tuck your shirt over it, and you're not going to print. Mostly it's us looking at each other saying, oh, I can see your gun. But you want to make sure that if you are concealed carrying, that it is concealed. Having it tucked in your over your belt, just loosely, or hanging out the back of your breeches, that's not concealed carry, because if it's seen, then that's not concealed. And so if anybody sees that, or a law enforcement officer, then you're going to have an issue there, because obviously you're not doing it professionally in a way, and it doesn't give people the best impression of you right off the bat.
Right. Obviously, if you're somebody my size, almost 6.5 feet tall, wearing 2XL shirts, you're going to carry a little bit different gun in a different way than someone who's 90 pounds and a female, or carrying in a purse, or trying to conceal on your person or something like that. There's a lot of considerations that go into choosing. There's something just on my mind and I lost it. You were talking about printing, and I had something. Oh, yes. We're talking about like first time concealed carrying, like for new people. And
Yes.
So thinking back to that, I remember every single time I would either get out of the car or reach over or something like that, it was always hand to my gun, pull down the shirt and make sure it's not covered, and I was probably broadcasting way more than anyone else would have picked up if I would have just done nothing.
Yep.
So that's definitely a big new to concealed carrying mistake, or is just get your hand off the gun. Nobody's looking for them for the most part, and so they're not going to notice a little bump by your belt or whatever. You'd be surprised what goes by, and people have no clue. Everybody's locked into their cell phones, and nobody's looking at you. Obviously, keep things covered up. Take a look in the mirror, see what's going on. Wear some patterns or some darker clothes or something like that. But people really aren't looking quite as close as you think. So don't broadcast more than you need to.
Yeah, and the size profile of the gun definitely comes into the printing aspect. Guns typically, at least semi-autos, they're kind of broken into different size categories. So you have your subcompact, which is the smallest, and then they have compact, which is a little bit bigger than that, and then you get into just standard service size pistols. And mostly what's affected between the compact and the subcompact is the grip length, and which of course translates directly to magazine capacity. And then you also have slide and barrel length as well. So for example, a Glock 17, if you're not familiar with, that's a service size pistol. And to go
Exhibit A.
Exhibit A. Now, if you were to go one size smaller than that, that would be the Glock 19, which I present to you, Exhibit B. So
and then if you were to go even smaller than that, we could present Exhibit C.
The Glock 26.
Even smaller than that is what you've been drooling over.
Yes, the not drooling, but just observing and kind of rubbing my beard. The Glock 42, which is a single stack 380.
Yep.
So that definitely has, if you're carrying...
there's kind of like your cross section this way, and then there's also the cross section widthwise.
Yes.
So your semi-automatics, the 9mm, they got two bullets that are stacking back and forth, and so it's a little bit wider than stacking one right on top of the other. If you were to look at revolvers, for example, the grips and the barrels might be a little skinnier, but the fact that the cylinder's there, it's a little wider in that one spot. So it might look like you're saving a bunch of weight or width, when in fact it might be wider.
Yep. So another really hot topic when it comes to choosing a gun for concealed carry is caliber, and this has sparked many debates on the internet, in the gun store. It's never going to stop. So the main issue here is, the gun that you have, the caliber that you have at the time when you need to address a threat is the one that you need. So there's been recorded instances where 22 long rifle, which is the smallest handgun caliber, has stopped a threat and stopped an incident. Whereas, you could go up to 45, 50 cal, but the bullet you have is the bullet you need, really. So it's really up to personal preference what you're comfortable with shooting. If you're really small framed, or perhaps you can't handle and mitigate recoil of something that's in the 40 or 9mm range, then you might be looking at something that's in a 380 or a 22 Magnum or 22 long rifle. It's not recommended, but it'll definitely do the job, especially with deterring a threat by just presenting your firearm.
Yeah,
and being.
We already went over the training aspect that you gotta know how to use your gun before you do use it. But you really need to be able to use it well. There's no reason to group way off the page with a big huge caliber just because you think that it's going to put big holes in the bad guy. You can't put down a threat if you don't put those rounds where you need to put them. So work your way up, figure out what you can handle. Obviously there's some advantages to hitting a little harder when the round actually gets to the bad guy, but there's no advantages to missing the guy and punching through however many layers of drywall that caliber punches through.
Yeah, you can't miss fast enough.
Shot placement.
Absolutely. And there's some of the mindset that if the threat happens to be under the influence of some narcotics, their pain sensory is a little bit higher, and so shooting with a weaker caliber, possibly it wouldn't affect them as much, and so that's some of the justification for using something that's got a faster velocity, and then you're getting into the type of bullet to stop that threat more effectively. I mean, if someone's cranked up on meth, a 22 long rifle, if they're a big guy and their adrenaline's going, and that might not do much, but if you use like a 9mm or a 40, that's definitely going to have more of a effect. The physics are going to be on your side at that point. So that's something else to consider. So let's go into bullet types, and I'm going to let you talk about what's your preferred bullet type.
I use an all copper bullet from a company called PNW Arms. They do some kind of contract work for some guys that use the bullets on a day-to-day basis. And I haven't done any testing on my own, just kind of read up and seen people seem to have some good things to say about them. All copper is kind of one of those hip things to do lately, and what you're looking for is a bullet that has an initial diameter, and then when it goes inside of somebody and starts bouncing around, that diameter opens up quite a bit. And so you'll hear hollow points, you'll hear open tip. I guess I'm thinking match rifle bullets now. But there's all sorts of buzzwords and proprietary names and things like that. But there's a whole lot of info online. Are there any good sites that you like to check out as far as comparing bullets?
I mostly look at certain YouTubers that do ammo testing. TN Outdoors 9 is one of my favorite ones to watch because he mixes up the ballistic grade gelatin and takes the caliber and multiple shots and kind of breaks down in slow motion what the bullet's doing when it's going through the gelatin. I mean, there's a lot of variables. I mean, we can only test bullets as well as the professionals do, so putting some denim in front of the target, if assailant's wearing a jean jacket, it's kind of tough. If it's a hollow point, how big does it flower out? Does any of the clothing get kind of clogged in the tip and prevent it from expanding? Is it a RIP bullet that has these opening razors? I think that as a general rule of thumb, a full metal jacket is not preferred in the defensive ammunition realm. It'll certainly do the trick in a pinch, and if that's your preference, but a lot of people prefer hollow points because of that controlled expansion, which actually releases the energy into the body a lot more rapidly, whereas a 230 grain ball 45 caliber bullet, it's not really dumping a whole lot of energy into that person. It's just kind of going right through, and if you don't hit any organs or bones, it's just going to be a straight through and through, whereas something that's a hollow point is going to open up and kind of cause this expanding wound cavity. In the hunting realm, we like to call that hydrostatic shock. But it basically, all that energy from that bullet gets delivered to that person, and it's kind of more of a jolt and a stopping of the threat. So that's what, and there's a lot of marketing. There's a whole lot of marketing involved into, these are the last bullets you'll ever need. But my personal preference is I prefer tried and tested and proven calibers that have been used in self-defense before. They're used by law enforcement, and so if I ever have to use my firearm, all the testing and kind of forensics is easy for them, because when you're standing in court, you're on trial, and they're asking you, why did you use this federal hydroshock, or why are you using the Spear Gold Dot, and you can say that, well, I did my research, and this is the round that the police used to defend themselves and stop threats, and I wanted the same amount of protection and reliability, and there you go. There's your defense.
Yep. And I don't know how often that actually comes up in court. Obviously, it's something that we kind of throw around between gun owners. But anything that can work for you, if it comes up, that's great in my book.
Exactly. So there's Full Metal Jacket, there's ballistic tips. So I'm thinking like Hornady Critical Defense. There's kind of a polymer plug that kind of helps start that expansion when it's made an impact. There's a lot out there. You just kind of have to do your research and maybe ask fellow gun owners. And nothing wrong with the tried and true stuff that's out there, especially for availability. You don't want to be carrying something you're not familiar with. So buying a brand new box of like Hydroshock plus P ammunition, and that's another thing we forgot to hit on, is sometimes a caliber will come in plus P rating, and you have to make sure that your handgun that you've chosen is rated to shoot plus P ammunition, or else you're going to have a bit of an over-pressurization issue in your firearm, and it's going to fail. So kind of be wary of that. I mean, it even
make
goes
sure
higher.
your gun can handle it, and then make sure you shoot it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's expensive. The ammo's more expensive than the ball that you're shooting at the range, but you need to know what it's going to feel like. Your plus Ps are going to shoot harder than your range ammo, and so you're going to use it differently. It's going to affect the way that you shoot it, and you need to make sure your gun can cycle it. You need to make sure that it's grouping in the same place as your range ammo, or whether you need to adjust something. And I would definitely not recommend buying only enough for your magazine. You need to buy a good number of boxes of that carry ammo, run it, and make sure it's a good fit.
Exactly. A lot of it will come in like smaller packs of 20 to 25. So, being that it costs so much more and you have less ammunition in the box, I think people are a little bit wary to use it. But it's so important. I mean, you got to know, at night how much of your night vision is going to be disrupted by the flash. If it's plus B plus, it's going to have a lot more power behind it, and it might possibly alter your ability to see at night. And like you said, your groupings on paper. That's part of the fun of it, is you pick your ammo and you go test it out, and you have the confidence that, yes, you're carrying, you have the confidence of a gun, but you need to have the confidence of, well, the bullets inside the gun, I know how to shoot them, and I can hit what I'm aiming at.
And it's a good exercise too, that whenever you're loading up your gun for the day, or however you do your routine, you're rocking bullets in and out of the chamber most often. And so take those bullets that are a little beat up, take them to the range, fire them, make sure you're still good with that particular load, and buy another box. There's no reason to have years old ammo in a gun that you're going to put your life into the hands of.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're constantly if you're carrying, that's another aspect of carrying too that we need to cover as well. But what kind of carrying are you carrying with a round in the chamber? Are you carrying with an empty chamber and the full mag? I certainly hope so. I don't see any other options than that. There's safeties on, safeties off, that kind of thing. And that's got a lot to do with just what you're comfortable with, and if your firearm doesn't have any external safeties, then that plays a big factor. If you're carrying a Glock, you either have a round in the chamber or you don't. So if there's a situation, if you don't feel comfortable to have a bullet in the chamber, you've got to draw your firearm and rack it. Hopefully you're behind cover. There's a lot of people that would argue, well, if you're not comfortable enough to carry one in the chamber, you're not comfortable enough with the gun itself, and you shouldn't do that. I don't necessarily agree, because
that's something I touched on last week when we kind of had a little panel on new shooter things, and we talked about getting comfortable and not really diving into things before you're ready. It took me definitely a couple months of carrying concealed with my Glocks before I felt comfortable dropping one into the chamber. And you get comfortable with your platform, you get enough time behind it, you figure out how it works, what the internal safeties are actually doing, and it gets you to a place where you are comfortable making those steps and putting yourself into a better position for when you do actually have to draw that gun, that it's ready for you, and that you are, you know exactly what needs to happen, whether it's flipping safeties off or whatever your gun requires.
Yeah, and you absolutely have to know at all times, is there a round loaded in this gun or is it clear? Because if you don't know, that's how accidents happen. And accident is a really loose term because it's really negligent because you didn't check. So if you get comfortable enough to carry with a round in the chamber and you come home, you pull your holster out, you set it on the table or you set it on the your dresser or whatnot, there's still a round in that chamber, and the longer time passes, you might possibly forget or not think about it. So the next time that you or God forbid somebody else in your family handles that firearm, well, nobody knows there's a bullet in that chamber and that it's ready to fire. So if you're going to take on the responsibility of being ready for a threat immediately and not having to rack your slide back or worry with safeties, if you're like a Glock, for instance, really easy to have a negligent discharge if you're not constantly aware of what's in that chamber. That's what we do, press checks. I mean, all you do, just rack the slide back. You know, obviously if a bullet hangs out, you got one in there. And definitely want to drop the magazine too, because if you do a press check and your mag's still in there, you let the slide down, there's a new bullet in the chamber that didn't solve anything. So it's something you constantly have to be aware of because, I mean, probably, God, I mean, just a rough statistic, I'd say 80 to 90% of holes in people's kitchen floors are from just, you know, not being aware that the firearm was armed, and then it you know, goes off, and oh, you know, whoops, I forgot, you know, and it's not a good excuse. So you have to be constantly aware of that. I mean, just get used to just racking that slide back and double checking. You know, that's another. If that's something that's beyond what you're capable of doing, you know, maybe a revolver is more of your liking because obviously, you know, that, you know, it's got the cylinder, and if the hammer's not back, it can't go off. You unload the cylinder or pop the cylinder out, and that's something you don't have to worry about. You agree?
I would agree. Trying to think if there's any other points to touch on for there. We didn't really go into revolvers much. I do have a revolver that I carry sometimes when I'm feeling a little nostalgic from wearing a suit or something like that. Sometimes I mix it up, but I'm not a big revolver advocate. I think there's been some developments, and semi-automatics are reliable enough at this point that I'm willing to depend on them.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a crowd that's a little bit of an older generation that just likes that reliable and simpler mechanics of a revolver, to where I know people that used to have a Glock 19, and there's one incident where, I mean, they weren't trained enough to use it, so when they pulled it out and they were fumbling around because they just didn't do the training enough for drills at home. So now they only carry revolvers because they feel that it's more simple and less to think about when your mind kind of goes into autopilot and, you know, oh, I've got a situation, you know, draw, hammer back, ready to go. It's definitely, I mean, there's always that nostalgic value that's cool, you know, like Dirty Harry, did I fire 5 or did I fire 6, you know? You know, and the caliber choices are pretty cool too. I mean, 44 is definitely a stopper of threats, both two-legged and four-legged, which you can't necessarily get in a comfortable semi-automatic handgun. You could, but that would be a pretty big holster. It'd be pretty heavy. You want to touch on lights and lasers?
Yeah, of course. Obviously, if you're going to be pulling your gun out to shoot somebody, you need to be able to see them. So I have zero statistics to back this up, but my assumption is that a lot of crime happens when it's dark. And so you need to be able to defend yourself in a way that you're lighting up the target and you're making sure that, yes, I do want to pull this trigger. And so that involves a flashlight. And so whether you keep it on your person and you hold it in your offhand or your mouth or your headlight, head holster, wristband, whatever, or if you actually put it on your gun, you got to have some illumination there. So my recommendation would be obviously leaving it on the gun, because it's always going to be there and it's always going to be pointing in the right direction, and most likely you'll only have to use one hand to use the gun and the light at the same time, if something comes up and your other hand's occupied. So there's a ton of different manufacturers that make them, but I would definitely stick to just the light and not really get into the laser. I do have one of those laser grips on my little revolver, and that's just kind of more for sighting. But I think you need to get good with the sighting of a semi-automatic. There's no reason not to be able to use the sights, and that all you really need to hook onto it is a light. People have debates about how bright that light should be, and that there's an upper threshold that, oh no, you're going to blind yourself. I'm not really in that camp. I think more is better, because you never know what the situation's going to be. In your home, obviously, the hallways, they might be solid white, and it might only be 5 yards to where the bad guy might be, or 2 yards, or something really close. And so turning on that light is going to flood the area with light, and it's going to be bright. But I think that's a whole lot better than turning on your light and not being able to see the guy that's coming and trying to hurt you or the people that you love.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're awakened in the middle of the night and by something in your home, and your first response is to have your firearm, not being able to identify if it's a stranger or a burglar or your daughter's boyfriend. I mean, that's something you have to be able to identify. So having there's a lot of semi-automatic pistols now with rails on them. So you can get any one of the rail-mounted lights that just go right on the underside of your barrel, and so you can easily activate it with your trigger finger or your supporting hand. So, for example, here's a Glock 19 with a popular brand of flashlight underneath it. So I can quickly just use my forefinger here and activate that light. This one has a strobe function as well. The camera's not fast enough to pick it up. But I prefer this way, because if I'm at night, pumping gas, or I'm in like a camping situation where there's just low light, low visibility, you need to be able to identify your threats. And so having that flashlight affixed to your gun is an easy way to make sure that your flashlight's there and not like sitting in your truck or kind of in your pocket, unable to be able to get to at the time. So I'm not really a big proponent of lasers either, because depending on the light situation, they don't necessarily appear. So if it's bright 90-degree weather, I mean, might be a chance that you can't even see where that laser is pointing. And if you're not familiar with your iron sights and you're not competent in using them, then your gun's actually pretty useless. You can't see your laser, and you haven't practiced with your iron sights, you can't reliably and confidently hit your target. So,
right, and it's the same thing on my 17. It's kind of a fancy one. I've got one of those RMRs on it, the red dot sight. That's not something that I depend on. It's just kind of an added bonus that helps me with precision and some longer shots and things like that. What I'm doing when I pull my gun up is looking for that front sight. That's what I'm sighting with. And then the red dot kind of shows up. If I were to depend on it, maybe the battery died, or maybe my hand isn't quite in the right position, and so I'm sitting there looking like an idiot trying to find a dot in this little window. So you need to get good with the iron sights that come on your pistol.
Absolutely. And so concealed carrying with a laser or light leads right into our next segment, which is holsters, because obviously that's going to change the profile of your firearm. And so you're going to need a special or a custom holster option to accommodate that. So right away, there's multiple categories of holsters, And the first one, which is the most popular for concealed carry, is inside the waistband, and sometimes that's abbreviated by IWB. And so what that means is you have a holster, that can be, kind of a pancake style, or something that's just leather backed and has these clips on it. And so these clips, this gets tucked into your pants, and these clips go over the top of your pants and over your belt. And so which kind of secures it and has it right, and kind of displaces the weight a little bit.
And those are great because of the soft leather on the inside. That's what's up against your skin.
Yeah, and after wearing these for a little bit, they break in kind of to your contour, and so they get a lot really comfortable. And if you're a person that might have a little bit more love to them, as I like to say, these are still really comfortable. Because after wearing it, your body heat will kind of warm up this leather, and it'll just kind of be like a nice little, after a while, like accustomed to your body. And so it'll feel almost like, hopefully that the whole intention of an inside the waistband holster is obviously comfort. I mean, obviously, concealing a firearm is less about comfort and more about, the ability to protect yourself. But comfort is a big aspect of it, because if you're, sitting in a truck most of the day, or you're at an office in your sitting position, or whatever you're doing on a regular basis, you want to be able to have that firearm. And if it's just not comfortable enough for you, then you're not going to want to carry it every day or consistently. And so it's really not going to do you good 100% of the time.
Right.
So there's also outside the waistband, which typically would be used for open carry. But if you're wearing if it's a jacket that covers that up, that's an option for concealed carrying. The advantages to that is, all you have to do is pull back the garment that's concealing the holster, and then pull out your firearm. Whereas inside the waistband, I mean, sometimes you want to tuck your shirt over the clip or over the holster part, so only the clips are exposed. And so in drawing, you have to actually, pull your shirt up, untuck it, and then grab your firearm. So there's a little bit of motion memory or muscle memory to get used to that as well. There's a shoulder holster, which is a harness that you kind of goes over your shoulders and behind your neck, and allows you to carry a firearm just underneath your armpit, which has.
Have you ever tried that?
Oh yeah, I love it in the winter.
Really?
Oh yeah, it just I could wear my pants options are a little bit better. Because if I carry inside the waistband.
On inside is that you got to start buying pants that are maybe an inch or two wider than you normally do.
Definitely. And it's just, more comfort as far as getting in and out of a vehicle, sitting down, not have to worry about bending over and printing, or maybe the grip pops out from underneath a jacket. I love shoulder holsters, and they also, sometimes they have magazine holders on the opposite side, and it kind of helps counter the weight. But I mean, I could carry 45 rounds of 9mm comfortably. Not saying that I need 45, and you can certainly, get a rig that maybe you can put a flashlight on the other side, and that would be even more useful than having.
Would you rather have 45 rounds of 9 or 9 rounds of 45?
Oh, that's the question there. It depends on if I'm. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, if you unload 45 rounds in an incident, man, that's gonna be just a crazy trial or just forensics case. And I mean, I'd be apologizing to the cops, saying, "I'm so sorry. Hey, look, there's a piece of brass there. You missed one there. I think I put one over there. Let me help you out a little bit," because that's a lot of homework for them.
Yeah.
So anyway.
I think I'd rather be policing brass than having my wife set up my funeral, though.
Yeah, that is also true. So shoulder holsters, they do come in leather as well as kind of more of a nylon type situation. You just find whatever's comfortable to you. They do require a little bit of adjustment, which it's hard to do while you're wearing. So having your spouse or your partner or your really good friend.
Fun little couples activity.
It is like, hey, sweetie, this holster's running a little bit low. Can you adjust it for me? I've done that a couple of times, and they certainly enjoy it too. That's one option. You know, they've got some that only hang on one side. And the advantage to that as well is you can carry a larger gun. You know, something with a longer barrel, like a full-size revolver, because now it's hanging vertically, and you've got basically from your, you know, a couple inches below your armpit all the way down to almost your belt line, to conceal a gun. So if dirty hair is the way you want to go, that's pretty much the only way you're going to be able to conceal it successfully. So I've got friends that, you know, like to do that as well. If a full size 5-inch 1911, that'd work really great for that. Those kind of things don't really work well when they're tucked in your pants, and so there's that. You want
One of the
to?
ways that some of my friends carry is appendix carry. They've convinced me that it's the best thing in the world. But one thing I've noticed is that they don't have quite the same dimensions as I do. Um, and so it was not comfortable for me at all. I don't know if you've tried that at all, but basically it's an inside the waistband that's right below your belly button.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat you are, and it's a little bit of a bigger boat than what they're in. So I understand you there. I just, you know, 4 o'clock fits just really nicely for me.
Yep.
As far as the position on my belt, you know, as far as you want to sit down, and if you can definitely, you don't want to be sitting on your holster, you know, but if it's kind of up in your appendix and you're sitting down and you've got a little bit more, you know, curves and dimensions to your body, then that's going to feel pronounced and uncomfortable. So something else to that is ankle holster is also an option, and that really limits your firearm choice as well. Obviously, you want something that's smaller. You don't want something that's hanging out the bottom of your pants, or when you affecting your gait when you walk. You know, if you have something that weighs, you know, like 30 ounces on your ankle, that ain't good. But this is something that a lot of police sometimes choose to carry an ankle holster as their backup. You know, if you're deep concealment, like undercover, that's what they like to do. So it works well for concealed carry for civilians. The only thing is, I mean, if you need to draw it, you need to bend down and get it. So you can't be like, wait, okay, I'll give you my wallet. Let me just tie my shoe real quick. 1 second. Ha ha. You know,
Yeah, I'm sure that
surprise.
situation comes up all the time.
Yeah, whereas having something that's on your hip, it's within arm's reach. If you're getting mugged, you can pretend like you're reaching for your wallet and still, you know, pull it out easily.
Sneaky, sneaky.
Sneaky, sneaky. But the ankle holster is an option too. Obviously, if you're going to be doing a lot of activity as far as running, that's something you don't want to consider. Something alternatively as well is pocket, jacket, or purse carry. And that's basically carrying your pistol, you know, hopefully within either a what's called a pocket holster. So it's basically just a covering that ensures that nothing can inside your pockets or your purse can get inside the trigger guard and activate the trigger. You know, whether it's a stick of mascara or lip balm or your keys. Obviously, you're going to want something Kydex or nylon to cover up your gun. But basically, it's if you're carrying a purse or a clutch, you're a female, or if that's your style, if you're a man, you've got a man bag. That's cool too. You know, it's in the purse.
It's called a bug out bag, man.
A bug out bag. All right.
Yeah.
It's not called a merce anymore.
It's not a man purse. It's a bug out bag.
Okay, there you go. A bug out bag. You know, it's not on your person. It's in the carrying apparatus. Some people might not agree with that because then again, if you're separated from that apparatus, that vessel, and you don't have it on you, it doesn't do you a whole lot of good. If you've got
your backup though, instead of your
yeah, that's when you go down to tie your shoe and grab out of your ankle holster. But I mean, if you got a Gucci purse and you're carrying your pistol in there, and somebody comes up behind you and swaps your purse over your shoulder and starts running off with it, they got your gun too. Exactly. So I don't allow my significant other to carry in her purse if she can prevent it, just for that reason alone. And she's taken a couple classes, and they've kind of told her the same thing. So it's kind of like, yes, I was right. So also
yeah,
there's
I mean, like you were saying, all the holsters. The most important thing is to protect that trigger guard. I mean,
Yeah.
we run Glocks, so obviously that's kind of the line of defense between you and a negligent discharge. Um, so I really wouldn't monkey around with this. This is the first thing that came with my first Glock. It's this little nylon sleeve with some Velcro on it, and it's just a joke. I mean, there's so many ways that could go wrong, that something could get in there and could activate the trigger. You just don't want to mess with that. So leaning towards like a form-fitted Kydex, which is like a hard plastic that you can heat up and form to whatever you want, or something a little more rigid plastic. You just need to have something firm around that trigger guard that's going to keep everything out of it.
Yep. And there's jackets that are kind of accustomed to carrying a firearm. So if it's like a 511 type shirt that has a secret kind of pocket that you can untuck a small profile gun in, or a jacket that's a little bit larger, that works as well. You may or may not want to have a holster. We would recommend it. They make holsters if you're concerned about pulling on the grip out and the holster coming with it. They do make holsters that have kind of a flared section of material that kind of acts like an anchor. So when you're pulling out of your pocket or your jacket pocket, the holster actually gets hung up in your jacket and stays there, and your gun is released from the holster just by you pulling on it. So there's that option as well. So let's get into the materials. I mean, there's Kydex, there's leather, there's nylon. I mean, am I missing anything?
I think the big one lately is Kydex. I've been converted to that. I know that it used to be leather. I mean, you'd have whoever do some fancy leather tooling for your 44 Magnum holster, and I just don't think leather is as good of an option anymore, because it deteriorates over time. Your gun's going to get loose inside of it, and it's not going to fit as well. And the tolerances on your gun just aren't as tight as you could get with these custom form-fitted plastics like Kydex.
Yeah.
Obviously, having leather as part of the material is great for like inside the waistband. The crossbreed that I run when I'm wearing a suit or something like that is fantastic. It's real thin, low profile, super comfy. But it's got Kydex on the outside, and that's what's actually protecting the trigger guard. Nowadays you can make your own if you know what you're doing. You watch a couple YouTube videos and become an expert. I did that for my revolver here through my gun store. We just started making some Kydex, and it's a great option. You just got to play around with what retention point on your gun you want to use. I ended up having it grab kind of the front of the trigger guard, and so that's where the holster grips. I think on the Raven Kydex that I have for my daily carry, I think it actually retains on the light, because this is a holster that's made for the light. So there's a little notch there that's where it's locking in on. One thing I'd try and avoid, if you can, is active retention that takes some sort of button press, like this one, to activate. This is, I want to say Blackhawk, but I know that they're a huge company that probably has lawyers, so I probably shouldn't say that. But it's got a button right where your trigger goes, and so you have to push that button to remove the gun, and you were just applying pressure right where the trigger goes, and so under stress you're probably apt to continue pressing right there, and so that could get your finger inside the trigger guard in a place where it shouldn't be while it's still pointing at your hip. If you're a cop, somebody that needs to have some sort of positive retention, there's straps that go over the top that are great, that you can flick out of the way with your thumb, or buttons that you push down that are getting kind of popular. But avoiding having to use your trigger finger for anything other than pulling the trigger is where I would sit. And that's the same with your flashlights. I mean, I don't think you should train to activate your flashlight with your trigger finger. You need to be doing that with your support hand if you can.
Yep. Now, with any holster that hangs from the belt, you're also going to want to look into investing in a good quality belt that can support the weight and keep your pants up first and foremost. But being able to handle the gun on your side using a just a regular cloth belt isn't going to cut it. So there's some really great leather belts out there. You can certainly try and make do with something that's just at your regular box stores, but there's a lot of holster companies that actually are starting to supply belts as well.
Yeah, I use something that's nylon. It's a 511 tactical. It's nothing too fancy, but it's a lot more rigid than just your normal kind of woven belt or whatever.
Yeah.
And that rigidity keeps your holster where it needs to be, so that your gun isn't flopping around if you carry a bigger gun. Obviously, there's fancy things that you can get as far as buckles. There's all these rigging harness latches that you can order your belt with and spend 3 figures on a friggin' belt. But getting whatever's comfortable and not too fancy. Obviously, this is something that you're going to be putting on every day with your gun, so it's a consideration for being able to slide your holster on and off of it and all that. But yeah, it's the basis that your weapons platform is sitting on, so it's not something that I'd skimp on. And I definitely look for something that's as wide as you can go inside your average belt loop, like 1.5 inches or something like that, and something a little more firm so your gun isn't flopping around.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's, I think the bigger box stores, I'm actually seeing, companies like Blackhawk being more available. I mean, the Walmart here in my town has a whole section dedicated to where that company's products are. There's Uncle Mike's is another really common manufacturer that you'll see in a lot of gun stores. It's kind of like the lowest common denominator, and they've got multiple products. So definitely look at all the offerings. For concealed carry, I wouldn't recommend something that was one clip, unless your body and your gun that you're choosing, it all works. So there's a lot of factors that are kind of involved. But in my experience, just the single clip holsters inside the waistband, they pivot back and forth on you. Sometimes that clip's not strong enough to where when you pull, the holster comes with it. The belt clip just releases. So you definitely want to look at something that's good for your firearm platform that you choose first and foremost, and then works with your attire and just your personality and your personal preferences. Anything else that we should cover?
That about covers the holsters part of it. I'm trying to think. I don't have too many other bullet points here to go over. If there's any other tips that you remember as a first-time concealed carrier that stuck out?
Well, first, I mean, there's really no dumb questions when you're a concealed carrier noob, and I think the majority of gun owners that have been concealed carrying and have some more experience under the belt, they'll be more than happy to offer their experience and some of the things they learned. Don't take one person's advice over the internet as the gospel. Definitely ask more than one person, friends or family. It's good to get everyone's feedback that you can. Maybe they have a preference and they're a similar body type to you. That would be a really good head start. So say if you're, slimmer, or you're a little bit more rounder, you're taller, shorter, find somebody at a gun shop that is a similar body type to you, and don't be like, hey, you're fat like I am, can I ask you some questions? Be a little bit more subtle than that. But like, hey, I'm interested in concealed carry. I noticed that you're of a similar body type to I am. Can I ask you what your preferences are? And that would give me kind of a better idea of what I should start looking at. That would be...
I'd say that's a great pickup line. I mean,
yeah.
It automatically weeds out the ladies that aren't interested in you being a concealed carrier. So they'll run away right off the start. And you're left with the pro gun, I guess similar body type. That could be a good thing or a bad thing. But it's a great way to start conversation.
I'm interested in becoming your body type. It's not quite there yet. I'm thinking in about a year. I should be close to where you're at. What's your preference?
Perfect.
Yeah. I'm definitely it's something that's rewarding, and I think as a free citizen, it's something that you're definitely entitled to. You're right, and whether the politics or not, self-preservation is the fundamental right as a human being, and I think that you should look into this as an option to ensure that you're preserving your life and the life of your loved ones.
Yep. And we keep going back to training and making sure you're comfortable with a gun before you're carrying it with you. Um, we could have a whole show about that, and I'm sure we might. Or I mean, we're on 110, so we might have already covered that. But definitely look into trainers in your area. Um, your gun shops will probably have posters hanging. Um, the trainers that I know, the toughest thing for them is getting guys in the door. Once you take that first class, you're going to realize, yeah, I really needed to do this, and I need to do it on a regular basis. And so getting repeat customers, it's easy for them. But getting people to actually show up and value the training after they've just spent however many hundreds of dollars on a gun,
Hmm.
um, it's tough for them. Excuse
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, definitely take a class. I mean, even if it costs $150 to $200, if it's a good class with a good structure, and you really need the fundamentals covered for you, it's the best investment you could make. I would actually say buy a handgun that's $150 $200 less than what you wanted, and take the class. Um,
Yeah, or just take an extra month or two to build up
yeah,
your
absolutely.
fund and definitely prioritize that over amassing the ammo stockpile.
Yes.
Um, as far as other things to consider, one of the things that I think gets left out of a lot of safety briefings that's unique to concealed carrying or shooting pistols is just working with a holster. I mean, you need to be training with that holster. You need to know how it responds around what you're wearing. Um, and it's really not a race when you finish. You see guys pull out their gun, boom, 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 holster it again. You see guys doing competitions like that, and they're running between stages and holstering and unholstering. And by the time it comes to put your gun away, that's the slowest thing that you need to do. Um, the situation's over. You're done using your gun. You do not need to shoot yourself in the leg, and that's how a lot of accidents happen at the range. Is by guys they train for whatever reason to holster as quickly as possible, and you'll get a little uh, twisty, stretchy catcher from your jacket caught inside your holster. That's going to get inside your trigger guard. It's going to pull against the trigger, and it's going to be a problem. So there's some safety concerns that are definitely gone over at concealed carry classes that kind of bring up some of those issues that you might not be aware of if you come from the rifle shooting or the just kind of plinking off of the bench sort of a style.
Yeah. And
Concealed
then
carry is a whole lifestyle, and it's a whole different style of shooting.
yeah. Another little tip trick to do is you've got your handgun, you've got your holster, you've got your method of carrying, and you want to do some drills at home, with dry fire practice. I would highly recommend picking up a set of A-Zoom or Carlson snap caps. There's a couple different companies that make them. Um, what you want is, get something, dummy rounds in your caliber, remove the live rounds from the gun, keep them separate, lock them up so there's no way to mix them up, and then do your dry fire drills with some dummy rounds in your magazines. And so you can also practice, failure to fire simulations. Say you draw from your holster, you shoot, and then for whatever reason it doesn't go off, or a failure, you rack the slide and the next dummy round goes in. That really helps to safely practice the extra steps. It's one thing to draw your gun, but everything that comes after that, the shooting, the reloading, those are useful things to practice as well. So if you're looking to take a little bit more your training and your competence to a little bit more intermediate, and you can only do this like in your house, I would definitely look at getting some dummy rounds.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yep. So we're almost at an hour and a half on so far. So I think we've covered a fair amount of concealed carry for the noob.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover.
There
and
is.
each little piece of it we could go on, and so we better kind of tie this one off.
Yeah. So if you have any questions, consult your local gun store or email us to leave a comment on the show notes, and we'd be more than happy to address any concerns you might have. Let's get right into the sponsor for this show, LA Police Gear. That's www.lapolicegear.com. They have pretty much a lot of gear that you would like, especially for on the topic of concealed carry, holsters and gear.
Yeah, I was just on their homepage, and they were advertising a special on the Surefire P2X Fury, and it's a handheld light. While we totally recommend having a light on your gun, hopefully you're not going to draw your handgun to go look for your keys. And so it's a great idea to have a secondary source of light somewhere on your person or in your man purse or somewhere. And so the Surefire, it's a great company that makes bomb-proof lights that are just fantastic. And those are what I have on my guns and in my pocket right now. And the P2X Fury, it's a 15/500 lumen light. And so you can switch between real bright and then just kind of for close-up. Tactically, we could argue about lights. That's a whole nother show. But I think that Fury is a fantastic option because 500 lumens is a whole bunch of light, and it's gonna light up your scene. And right now it looks like it's about 30% off. It's like $46 off of what they normally go for, so it's just over $100. And so yeah, it looks like LA Police Gear has a great price on that. So check them out at lapolicegear.com.
Yep, and our next sponsor is Duluth Trading. So you can go to www.gunguyradio.com/Duluth. That's DULUTH. And
make sure
Duluth,
you watch their TV ads too, because they're fantastic. They've got them on their website.
yes. So Duluth has a lot of different things. Clothing is one of what they're more known for. But they've got, kits and bags, and basically, and if you're kind of more of the outdoorsy type, they're kind of like a more, I would say, more attainable REI as far as just, I'm a Joe Blow, and this has some quality products that are for outdoors, indoors, and it has that kind of. Definitely, their website's got a nostalgic feel to them. They've got some great
it's kind
products.
of like a Sierra Trading Post, but for the working man or something like that.
Exactly, yeah.
I love the ballroom jeans. They're fantastic. I wear them to the range all the time, and they hold up like crazy.
So if you purchase through them through the affiliate link, that would also give a little bit of donation to the network as well. So make sure you do that before you do any big shopping there.
All right, let's move on to some feedback.
Yeah, some feedback. So Jim gave us some feedback on a Comtac holster. He said that this holster that holds my LCP 380 around the house when I don't have a belt on to carry my XD9 in my Minotaur MTAC holster. He's also saying that the flashbang holster looks like it could be easily converted to carry the same as the centerline for easy deployment.
So it looks like he's got a couple options there that have been working for him when he's carrying.
Yes. So that's another holster option that we didn't cover for the ladies is the brassiere holster, which flashbang bras. They allow you to carry below the underwire or above, kind of within it. Kind of depends on how ample, how gifted you are in that department. They've got some great videos from ladies, made from women to women.
I know Jake's not here, so maybe we can volunteer him to do a video review of the flashbang. He comes back from paternity leave.
I think that'd be a great idea.
Awesome. We'll sign him up.
So let's also the YouTube channel of the week that we want to plug. It's 8541 Tactical, and have you seen this guy's YouTube channel?
Oh yeah, he does a ton of that long range stuff. What you're talking about, switching out your stock on your Remy 700. He's all into that. He's got all sorts of info on glass bedding, and he's got a great website too, alongside his YouTube channel. 8541. That's the MOS for Marine Scout Snipers, and that was his background. So he really knows what he's talking about. And
Yes.
Yeah, I love watching his stuff.
He does like a mail call Mondays where he takes viewer questions. He also does some reloading tips. Rolling your own rifle rounds, some kind of tips and tricks, and certain reloading components and gear that you might want to pick up into making some really safe and reliable loads that really perform well for you.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever gone into his descriptions of his videos, but he does longer videos, maybe an hour, sometimes up to 2 hours. And in his descriptions, he's got links to the minute marks throughout the video with what he's talking about. So if there's something that you're interested in, you just click on it and it goes straight to that part. It's unbelievable. And if you're listening, thank you so much for taking the time to do that. It's awesome.
And also, Nut and Fancy, if you're listening, please do that. Start doing that, please. Definitely a great way to let us interact more and get the information that we're looking for right off the bat without having to sit.
It's been a while since I've sat through a Nut and Fancy. I'm sad to admit.
Well, some popcorn might be required for watching one of those episodes because it's definitely
good to kind of have in the background, maybe on the TV while I'm working on something. And,
yeah.
Oh yeah, that's cool. Watch him shoot for half an hour.
Yep. So there's also another Brownells giveaway that we want to announce the winner for the month of February. It's for the Series 3 AR multitasker tool. That's black with G10 and the plain edge blade, and the winner is Brady Brown. So congratulations. You'll be getting contacted from us and receive your giveaway prize. So stay tuned for more giveaways every month. We always try and bring some sweet swag to our fan base. So.
Yeah, Brownells has been great about tossing some stuff our way to pass on to you guys, the listeners.
Yeah, big props to Brownells for that. That's awesome. So next episode, we'll be announcing the giveaway item for the month of March. Enter by subscribing to our email newsletter and by going to gunguyradio.com/winner for more details. So the sponsor for this episode apparently is myself. The Ryan Cross is my name, and Hunter of Design is my blog and portfolio website. If you don't already know, I do graphic design for the network, both the Firearms Insider and the Firearms Radio Network. I've been doing logos for Second Amendment Pro podcasts for past couple years now. It's what I'm good at. I kind of feel like it's what I've been put on this earth to do well. Kind of weird, but
that's awesome.
Yeah, I just like making logos and being creative. So logos, websites, banners, anything that just needs a little creative touch, that's where my strongest suit is. So I definitely enjoy doing all the different podcasts, especially when they have their own little personalities. And I do my homework. I look up competition, I look at trends, and the end product is always something that stands out as unique and has some longevity to it, something you haven't really seen before, and something you can definitely be proud of. Something that a lot of people, after I show them, the first round of concepts, so there's between 5 to 7 different logos for them to look at. I try and make it my goal that they have a really hard time picking their favorite, because if I'm presenting a logo that's I wouldn't pick personally. I wouldn't want them to pick either, because it wouldn't represent both of us very well. So I try and put that out there. Check out my website and see what kind of work I do. And I appreciate sponsoring this episode. So So in wrap up, please share your thoughts and feedback by leaving a comment at the bottom of the show notes or YouTube video for this week's episode. Remember to subscribe to us in iTunes so that you never miss a show, and please leave us a review there as well. We really appreciate iTunes reviews, and we would appreciate if you were to take the time to leave us one. Definitely join the NRA and if you can, join the Second Amendment Foundation.
We mentioned kind of at the beginning, there's some political issues that definitely affect us as concealed carriers, and it's organizations like that really that's their mission. It's to have our best interest
Absolutely
in mind in Washington and in each of the states.
Yeah, the NRA and other pro Second Amendment foundations, they represent their members, much like our government needs to represent its people. So, for your voice to be heard, you should definitely join one of these groups, because that money goes right into some of the legislative efforts and keeping your rights in check, or keeping your rights available and keeping the government and legislation in check as far as what they can and cannot pass. Don't forget to shop at Brownells using our affiliate link, so go to www.gunguyradio.com/satisfaction.
I like that one.
Yes, that was brilliant. Not my idea. That's got Jacob written all over it.
Yeah.
So you can also contribute to the show by shopping Amazon.com via our affiliate banners or link www.firearmsradio.tv/Amazon. And don't forget to check out other shows on the Firearms Radio Network. Subscribe and listen for free at www.firearmsradio.tv/iTunes. And for the featured podcast that we want to promote on the network, it's going to be Handgun Radio. So that's hosted by Ryan Machad, and
they've got a lot of info on some of the topics that we touched on. A lot deeper depth. I saw a couple of podcasts ago they went into flashlights, lasers, and gadgets, and I'd love to give a listen. I'll have to put that on my iPod to get a little more info on what they were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're a listener that maybe doesn't have much interest in rifles or doesn't have a rifle and handguns, or whether you have one handgun or 20 handguns, it's definitely the podcast for you to listen to.
Oh yeah.
So thanks for joining us, and stay tuned and listen to next week's episode. You can catch myself on the Firearms Insider Gun and Gear Review podcast. I host that every week. And what do you host, JW?
Oh, I'm a co-host over at the AR-15 podcast, and lately it seems like I've been kind of pulled a couple different ways to fill in on a few shows. So I think you might hear me on This Week in Guns this week. And so I've been perusing the news sites and pulling things together. But yeah, you can visit the AR podcast at ar15podcast.com. Just get in touch there if something pops up on your news feed this week that you think I should take a look at and maybe bring to the panel. Just get in touch, and I'd love to hear from you.
Yep, and if you're interested in listening to the Gun and Gear Review podcast, you need to go to firearmsinsider.tv and then look at the Gun and Gear tab to see all the latest shows, and everything that we review we put under reviews, and there's definitely quite a few that's added up already. So stay tuned for that, and have a great week. Stay warm, and signing out.
All right, have a good one, guys.
Yep.
This has been a production of the Firearms Radio Network. You can find more information at firearmsradio.tv.